Having a good day. Welcome to drboycetv.com, the home for intelligent Black people. And I am super excited today. Today is a special day because today is Powernomics Thursday. And as you all know, that it's been a while since we've had a chance to have our good friend into the podcast. But I'm so happy that he's here. His name is Dr. Claud Anderson. Dr. Anderson is the author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, Dirty Little Secrets 1 and 2. And those of you that are in the book club, you're aware of Black Labor, White Wealth because we've been reading this book intensely and very carefully. And so I want to welcome all of you into the chat and also ask my good friend, Dr. Anderson, how you doing today, sir?
You might not believe this, Doc, and I'm going to make a big surprise and present it to you. You know what it is?
What's that?
I feel better today than I have felt in about 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And
wow.
That's why I was looking forward to being with you today. So I'm comfortably happy. And I feel that there's not because I've had such an overwhelming amount of success come my way. And when normally it's a school bus that runs over me and parks on top of me. But in this case, I just feel that most of the things I want in life, I think I got now. And the top of that list is your friendship. So that's most of it right there. That's about 80% of it. And but I'm happy. I feel good. And and I guess one of the biggest things I'm happy about is that most of my life, I started off into politics by making predictions, and most of them used to come true. That's why I got on with different governors and also with presidents and stuff like that. And I can say with all assurances that every prediction I've ever made has always come true. And now I'm happy by looking at a negative that I told Black folk over and over again 20-something years ago when I put out Powernomics that again the Democrats gonna let you down again, take you for granted, and use you, and do nothing for you. And that's exactly what's going on right now in the Biden administration. Nobody's doing anything for Black folk. We do not have not one, Doc, Black personality, visible person who's self-sufficient enough to be able to stand up for Black folk, to do anything for Black folk, to bring anything to Black folk, solely and strictly to Black folk, and not get engaged in horizontal issues. And every Black I know that has any visibility is spending all their time and energy taking care of by things that have no implication for Black folk. They're majoring in the minors. They're engaged in horizontal issues. And horizontal issues usually means those things that impact and have an effect and a beneficiary effect on everybody. Nobody looks out for Black folk. And horizontal issues, you know, politics in general, that's a horizontal issue. Anybody can engage in politics. I don't care whether you're in Afghanistan or in South Florida. Religion, everybody got religions all around the world. And you can't indescribable number of religions. Gender issues. They got genders in every society, different genders. Those are all horizontal issues. Poverty, you got poor people everywhere. The Bible talked about that, mentioned and proclaimed that way back a couple of thousand years ago. Well, we got what else, Dr. Anderson? We got issues with veterans versus non-veterans. The world is running over with symptoms, and yet Black folks still majoring in minors, like any of those issues I just announced to you. Always want to deal with something that is ceremonious and superficial, has no significance with Black folk. None of those things will gain any traction with Black folk. That's why Black folks' condition remains totally unchanged since the beginning of slavery and also in the second time following the Civil War. They're not going to any place. Nobody's focusing on pushing things strictly solely for Black folk. If you're pushing it for everybody, it won't do Black folk any good. That contradicts and erases Blacks' exceptionality in our society.
Everybody who just came in, I'm speaking with Dr. Claud Anderson. Dr. Anderson is the author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, and Dirty Little Secrets 1 and 2. If you all could put your B1s in the chat after you hit the thumbs up button, subscribe button, do that, and then put a B1 in the chat. to let us know that you are Black first, that you are okay with putting your community at the top of your priority list, and also making sure that your people are doing well before you start taking care of all people. That's what we believe in. We're not shy about that. And also, please greet Dr. Anderson and let him know how happy you are that he's doing better and how much we appreciate him. I think it's very important that we do that and be very conscious about these sorts of things, because as far as I'm concerned, people like Dr. Anderson, those are, he's my superhero. This is the kind of guy that I look up to. I don't believe in looking to media to give you what you need. You've got what you need in your own community. You got to value that. So, Dr. Anderson, let me ask you this question then.
Okay.
So you talked about oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. So you talked about Biden, and you feel that the Biden presidency isn't really delivering the way we wanted to, the way Black folks need. And also last night, I don't know if you know that or not. You and I talked about it briefly. I remind you, on Wednesday nights we're reading this book. We're reading Black Labor, White Wealth in our book club, and yeah, we were going through. We're still in the early stages of the book, and one of the things that was brought up was something that you just mentioned, that there is a lack of understanding amongst prominent Black people, that Black people haven't been making progress, particularly in the areas of economics and education, things like that. Or about 100,000 Black kids graduate from high school every year without even being able to read on grade level. Wealth-wise, our wealth has not grown, and it seems like this falls on deaf ears. It seems that there's really nobody on a national level that's really talking about this, from the Al Sharptons all the way across the board. What do you think it would take to get them to start understanding that, or having legitimate measuring sticks, so that they stop just sort of thinking that because they're up there and on TV, that somehow that's progress for Black people?
I'll tell you the same thing I told one host on one of the radio stations, I guess about 21 years ago, about 1900 and 99. I told him that time, he asked the same question. I said, you don't know what it'll take to change Black folks' condition? It's more pain. I know that doesn't seem like it makes any sense by my saying that to you, but we need more pain. That's it. That's the long and short of it. Because I found out a long time ago, as a doctor in the medical field, one of the things of a drive person to a doctor's office is that he can have a sore foot, a sore leg, or a sore eye, anything he wants to. But as long as he can tolerate that pain, he will not go to a medical practitioner that has any expertise and knowledge about how to resolve his problem. Yeah, he was sitting down. Well, I'll bathe in my foot tonight, and I'll put a rag on my head tomorrow. Maybe that'll be okay, and I'll take some aspirin. But once that pain becomes so acute, doctor, he can't stand the pain anymore. You know what he'll do? He'll take his butt to the doctor then. You see, in other words, that leg started, he can't walk anymore, and the legs start turning purple, and gangrene sets in, then he'll go to the doctor. But until that leg becomes so severe and acute in the pain, he's going to continue to tolerate it. Right now, Black folk are tolerating pain to the foremost, because it's still not enough pain. Even after 365 years of slavery, 150 years of semi-slavery, and another 60 years of benign neglect, Black folks still need some more pain. They're not going to do it until that happens. Let me give you another thing I found out. Even in survival in the Marine Corps overseas, one of the things I learned early in trying to rehabilitate our prisoners is that people will tolerate something until the point where they say, well, I don't mind dying because I'm going to stop this pain one way or the other. Black people right now in these urban areas, they know that we're undergoing a new form of gentrification, that they're getting ready to get wiped out. This new Opportunity Act that was passed about 2 or 3 years ago by Trump, that's now encouraging people from the major society to come into every Black community in the country and to gentrify it, take it over. They're being put out of existence in space in every major city, but they sit there and tolerate it. A Black person right now will sit outside on a street corner and look around him, and he can see garbage cans over here. He can see somebody throwing away beer cans here. And he can see weeds growing up behind him, as tall as he is, a raggedy fence run down. He'll sit there with his friends and talk and yak all day long. He'll tolerate those conditions. And anybody that would tolerate anything and until they become accustomed to it, there's nothing you can do for them. And see, the pain is not acute enough on Black folk yet. And we found that even prisoners will tolerate pain under so long as you do not, long as it can be severe, but not severe enough to make them change. We don't have enough. We don't have enough pain yet. And I found that out from watching the prisoners. They would take it. They'd take it just to get an apple. They would sell their own people out for a candy bar. And Black folk do the same thing right now. They sell their own people out just to get a job in a major white corporation, because the epitome of success in the Black community is not doing something for Black folk. It's for appearing someplace with white folks, and they looking up and say, "There's the only Black that is being successful." That is that's successful for a Black person to look forward to having a job in a major white business. But you never heard of any other group, Asian, Hispanic, Arab, Muslim, anybody, saying my point of determining my successability or successfulness is how high I can get a job in the white corporations. Only Blacks will do that. Blacks will look forward to getting a big job or a title and working with some in media, magazines, corporations, businesses, automobiles, and if yet they own nothing. And that's when the pain is out there. When the pain comes, Blacks will change.
Well, I'll tell you, Dr. Anderson, that is a good point. I was reflecting. I'd like to get your thoughts on some of this. I'd like to talk a little bit about HBCUs and what you know about maybe the history of HBCUs. Now, I have nothing against HBCUs, but I do find it interesting that some of the HBCUs, particularly schools like Howard and Spelman, were actually named after white folks, and I wondered if this is connected to the fact that it seems that the mission of many of our universities, even HBCUs, was not so much to empower the Black community to build independent wealth, but as much as it was to train Black people to go work for white people. And I'm wondering if you could speak to some of that history. And what that led me to believe, and I know in the Black business schools is basically we've just said we need to reshape business education for Black folks and help our people understand it from a foundational standpoint. You don't just work for the businesses, you go build the businesses. You make the investments. You don't want to just sort of be the capital. You want to be the owner of the capital. You don't just manage the capital. You want to actually control the capital. That doesn't seem to be a common kind of message. Can you speak to that in terms of maybe where HBCUs or just universities in general are coming up short in closing the racial wealth gap?
That's funny. You know why? Our school system, as they presently exist, they were modeled strictly and primarily for Black folk. White folk never had a problem having schools. They didn't have because they had religious schools. They had all kind of parochial schools. But our present school structure was structured primarily to handle all the million of Black kids that are going to be freed from slavery and to accommodate them. And the first one you just mentioned was Howard. See, they were designed to educate you and equip you to be competitive people.
Wow. Please keep talking. I'm fascinated by the way you laugh, because I think people need to understand this. So give us what history you know. I know you are a Black history expert, but I don't expect you to know everything, but I know you know a lot. What do we not know in terms of the history of HBCUs that you think Black folks should understand? Not to be critical, not to attack them, but to really talk about why they were created and what how the outcome connects to why they were created. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do. But see, from the get-go, starting about immediately after the Civil War ended, at that time they said they have to do something to accommodate these Black kids. Can't just have them running wild, put them into a school, and so a school setting. So they said, well, how are we going to do that? And so they said, well, what we'll do is that we'll have a few what we call abolitionists to set up special schools here and there, a little small room houses, maybe educate about 5 or 6 kids in a room, and for educating Black kids. But they were instructed from the get-go, do not try to educate Black kids to be competitive with white kids. That is a no. There's never been any school system in the United States, including your favorite school, Howard. Howard was not designed to educate blacks or equip black folk to be competitive with whites. That was never their design. And I hear people talk, well, Howard University is this. Howard University was one of the first ones that set a model for what was happening to blacks HBCUs right now across the country. Howard University was named after Howard, the general during the Civil War. And he'd done such a magnificent job of trying to be able to end some formal forms of slavery in the United States. He got appointed to be the first president of Howard University. And Howard University was put in effect to be able to, by the radical Republicans at that time, immediately after the Civil War, for that 10-year, what we call a Reconstruction period. And that's what the word reconstruct means. And so they asked him to be able to set up schools to accommodate their children, the children they were having by black women, either as wives or mistresses. And all those blacks. So Howard was set up to be a special school for the offsprings of white elected officials in the United States. And they were set up to be a special school for them. And a white man was the first one to be the president of it. He stated, and they had white presidents up until about almost 1950. They were always operating, again, under special privileges set up by the United States government. So Howard was the only school, then we'll go back and talk about the regular schools. Howard was set up to be a special school to accommodate and bring pleasure and comfort and a sense of relaxation and non-competitiveness into the white society, and by the principal parents of offsprings, mulatto offsprings offsprings of white congressmen. And that's what it was for. So consequently, they said, now, and we will fund you. And that's the only school that the government approved to fund, was that one which would bring comfort to whites. So whites got benefits out of it by having public funds pay for educating their children and the babies of white congressmen and white elected officials. And so that's why Howard was the only school that was given permission to create a few schools inside that university that would try to equip those mulatto kids to be able to be competitive with whites. And they put up two schools. The first one was a medical school. That's why Howard was the only black school that had a medical school. Then the second one was a law school. That was so blacks could go into law. And the third one, again, was to do some business development. That was it. For all the regular schools, when we go back to the other schools in a few seconds, that was designed to equip black folks to be trained strictly in manual arts, what you can do with your hands and your back. That was it. But Howard was set up to be only for the elites. That's why they always talk about Howard being the capstone of this, capstone of that. It was a capstone of creating blacks that wind up eventually being as sambo as they can be and still be accepted into society and accepted by black folk who didn't know any better what Howard's real purpose was to kind of consolidate and conflate mulatto kids with the regular kids, so they wouldn't look like it would be a special privileged kid, a school rather, for whites and semi-white kids.
Wow. Well, everybody who's watching, I'm speaking with Dr. Claud Anderson. He's the author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, and Dirty Little Secrets 1 and 2. If you have not taken a look at his books, you should definitely go to Powernomics.com and take a look. He has the whole library pack of all of his books, plus a DVD for $99. I'm a big believer that these are the first books your kids should read. Every family should have these books. We are the school system. We are the school system. And in order for us to be the school system, we must decide what our children are going to learn, what's going to go in their brain. So I hope you'll go to Powernomics.com to take a look at that. Also, Dr. Anderson, I want to ask you about this.
Before you leave that, Doc, let me go back and jump back 1 second, not 1 second, maybe about a minute, to talk about the regular schools. The regular schools went into effect about 1868. They went in there to try to educate black kids in general, but teach them manual skills. They were authorized to create skills and some social development in certain sections, like, for instance, in social work, okay, and nursing, to bring some healthcare, house nursing, home, what's called home nursing, domestic servants, or learn domestic cooking. So all the schools taught domestic cooking to a girl by the time she get into about 13 or 14 years of age. she was taught to be able to cook in a home and to be able to sew and wash clothes and take care of babies and stuff like that. They also, and for the boys, they taught them stuff like woodwork. They learned wood shop and any skill that bricklaying and pipe fitting. And so pretty soon, after about 2 or 3 generations, Black folk were producing, those manual arts schools were producing the heaviest concentration of artistic, and I mean, they're not artistic, but are artisans in the South and in the country. That's why the United States Department of Commerce in 1905 put out a study showing that almost 90% of the artisan workers in the United States were Blacks. They were the ones who could do all that, could run shops, because they had been trained to take care of themselves. In the South, Black kids, no Black kid could graduate from a school in the South without having put in at least 2 years in a shop. And he would go to school from the first grade to the 10th grade. If he made it that far, the last 2 years before he can get a certificate or graduate from a school in the South, he had to put in a half a day every day into a shop. He was learning things like woodwork, plumbing, electricity, bricklaying, all these kind of things. And that's why most of the Blacks coming from the South were contractors. They did the contracting work, not Hispanics, no other groups. Hispanics could not beat them and take the jobs in those days because Black folk had been taught manual skills and manual crafts. Now the elite was up with Howard. And then he set up a few more church-based religious schools that taught and I think 1 or 2 in Tennessee and someplace else. They tried to pick up and try to emulate Howard, and they created a couple of Black medical schools. One was Howard down Florida A&M University. Had a hospital for a short period of time. We had a hospital in Harlem where Black kids are learning can have their own hospitals. But by and large, the only place where Black folk could get those kind of skills that would make them competitive with whites, like architecture and engineering, was go to Howard. And a few Black schools developed in the South later and began to offer some competitive skills, but most of them came out of Howard.
Really? Okay. So the point that you made about the crafts and the trades, it seems like we lost a lot of that. I know I got a text message from a friend of mine who's getting their whole kitchen redone, and she was sending me pictures. And one thing she said that the whole crew was Hispanic, and she said there was a time where Black people were the ones who had all those jobs. Right. And it seems that now that, with immigration policy being what it is, things like that Black people kind of been pushed to the side in a lot of those areas. Can you kind of speak to some of that in terms of what you see in terms of shifting in those economic dynamics that really matter for our people?
Well, yes. And see that shift occurred in response to the Black civil rights movement of the 1960s. They got tripped, locked, and boxed and didn't know it. And all of a sudden, what white folks told them was that, look, if y'all want social integration, and really no Black had more than a damn high school education, would ever tell them to go chase social integration. Social integration is a negative. Anytime you integrate anything, you're weakening it. They was weakening Black folk down by going for social integration. Black folk never asked for social integration. They wanted desegregation, which means stop using the government to give preferential treatment in terms of wealth, power, and resources to the whites and not to the Blacks. That was the issue. When it got into the Supreme Court decision by 1954, the NAACP jumped in there, and with a group of executive lawyers that says, let's close down all the Black schools, and say that, and let's come up with some ridiculous statements that show that we don't want anymore. We don't want any more dual systems. We only want one school system, and that'll be a white one. Anything that's Black gotta be faded out, erased. And so they started closing down all of Black schools in the United States. And they started saying that we're gonna close down all the Black public schools and integrate them. And what integration mean, like I asked them, when I was the first Black to get appointed over an entire state school system. I asked the people in Florida, I said, what does social integration mean to you all down here? And so they came back from the Department of Education and said, well, Dr. Anderson, social integration means, here's our plan. We're going to close down We're going to close down we're going to fire all the Black teachers, the Black administrators, the Black counselors, and the Black specialists to help Black folks in these schools. We're going to close them down. We're going to close that. We're going to close down all the Black schools and convert them over to warehouses. And we're going to ship 75% of the Black kids on buses to white schools and put the rest in the special education classes. That's what social integration meant. They closed down the Black schools. And so Black schools cease and desist in giving those special courses for Black folk. They said, in addition to closing down all of your schools and firing all your teachers and administrators and your counselors, we're also going to say that you can no longer teach anything as Black. You cannot teach Black history anymore. You cannot focus on Blackness anymore. That you now must be a miniature white school, that all Black public colleges that you just asked about HBCUs, you must function as miniature white colleges, which means you no longer have a special mission to elevate Black folk, to bring Blacks into a higher level of competitiveness with other groups. You can no longer do that. And secondly, that you must now, any monies you get, you must open it up in terms of giving scholarships and other financial assistance, not just to Black kids. You must give it to any other kid who approaches your HBCUs. And so like as a matter of fact, as a point, what I'm talking about, in 1996, Bush passed a resolution that says basically that any white school in the United States that gets a 20 to 21% Hispanic population is now equal to a Black HBCU, and that they can go into that same pot of money that you put in and the fraud that's going on by pretending that HBCUs are getting a certain amount of money. That's BS, because that money that goes into there, now any white kid can go to a Black school and get scholarships and all kind of financial assistance based on his whiteness. But a Black kid cannot go into every white school and say, we want to get financial assistance and scholarship. They'll say, well, that's discrimination. You're discrimination against the Arabs and the Asians if we give you all something in a white school. But if you go to a Black school and you're white, you can get all those rewards and compensations and financial assistance. And so it's a whole crap game going.
Well, everybody, I'm speaking with Dr. Claud Anderson. Dr. Anderson is the author of the books Black Labor, White Wealth, the Black History Reader, Powernomics, and many more. His website is powernomics.com. Also want to remind everybody, follow us on Instagram at The Real Boyce Watkins. And don't forget that tonight we're going to premiere our new movie, the new movie we just made called Till Death Do Us Part. And you can actually register. We're going to show it tonight at 8 p.m. It's totally free to the community. Anybody can come for free. We don't want the costs to stop you from watching good Black movies, because we believe that it's not just a matter of talking about taking over industries. It's about actually doing it. So we've been making movies. They've been seen by millions of people. And we believe that if you don't like media, then you should seek to control that. So blackmovienight.net is where you can register to watch the film. And I want to ask you about that, Dr. Anderson. So let's shift gears a little bit in terms of industry. Can
I make 2 minutes and close out that other point?
Oh, please.
Okay. Sure. Now, see, when I was appointed over education for the state of Florida, that's everything in the public sector and the private sector, from the nursery school all the way to the graduate school. I was the only Black in the entire United States was put in such a powerful position, prestigious position to be over education. And see, one of the first things the whites voted for in the legislature, the state legislature, said, let's close down FAMU, based on what Anderson's saying, because he's right. Is that right now we don't need two universities in Tallahassee, Florida. We don't need to have Florida State University over here and Florida A&M University over here. What we do that, we need to merge those two schools. And for instance, they closed down the law school in FAMU. They closed down the hospital in FAMU. And the only thing was left was just a little center, the liberal arts aspect of it. Then they say, but in the liberal arts, we don't even want you to teach anything dealing with race matters. You got to be small miniature colleges. It's an offense. It's offensive to white kids and other kids that come to your school and hear about race matters in a Black school, an HBCU. Don't teach those classes. You got to go mainstream. Social integration means mainstream. It means strip yourself. Social integration means strip yourself of your heritage, your history, your leadership, your money, your institute, all your all these things that you've been taking pride in having, your music, everything black has to disappear under social integration based on the 1954 desegregation decision. And so FAMU, then they're going to, so what we're going to do, excuse me, is to merge Florida State University with Florida A&M University. And there's not one black in the country that understand why that merger did not occur. It didn't occur because I blocked it. I went to the state legislature and said, no, you're not going to close out that university, even though I know now it's not doing what it should be doing, because no black school in the country right now has accepted their traditional and a classical role for blacks children to make them competitive with whites. And they still trying to say, well, white teachers do a good job with black kids. White folk aren't that stupid. They're not going to raise your kids to be equal to competitive with theirs. And so I said, you can't close down Florida A&M University. And they were planning on building a road, major boulevard, right down through Florida A&M University campus. Blacks didn't know that. They didn't even know that. And I told them, you can't do that. They said, we're going to take Adams Street, we're going to widen it, make it a 4-lane, and go right down the center of the campus. That way, those black kids have to go to Florida State University. I said, that's BS. And I raised so much hell as over education in the state of Florida. They now, if you go down to Tallahassee and you leave the capital and start towards Florida A&M University, it turns. You make a quarter, about 180-degree turns all the way around, and come back down, hit Adams, and go back down to the center. But now it's a circle around, because I would not let them drive and take a 4-lane street right through the heart of FAMU's campus to kill off the black university. And now the university is still not doing what it should be doing. I said, get some programs there for black folk. They said, well, Dr. Anderson, we got the best business schools right now on the campus. I said, why is that? Oh, well, because I said, what are you teaching? They said, we teach business administration. I said, quit teaching damn business administration. Teach industrialization to black kids. Teach them how to build industries and factories. Don't be teaching them how to build, administrate, how to run somebody else, a white business. I said, that's your, where they work from Procter & Gamble and they working for Kodak. I said, no, I don't teach them that anymore. Teach them how to come out of that school totally equipped to focus on black folks' needs, on black folks' key needs. And so at that time, I raised Cain about that and got them to build a special school there for business in that school. I put in a black college there component for educating black chiefs of police across the country. And I got that funded where blacks across America can come into Florida A&M University. I put a big control tower there where they learn how to set the place on fire, learn how to break into buildings and put out fires and be a fire chief. That was the only school in the United States that was teaching black folk how to be fire chiefs in the United States, because otherwise blacks could not have the experience and could not qualify to be a fire chief. I put in a Navy training center there. I put in a Navy training center for black kids to go into naval training and then get their tuition free. And they learn how to be officers in the service and run boats and stuff. Then I gave them a damn boat from when I was with President Carter. Gave them a PT boat so they can go out on the water and practice on using a ship. They didn't have any ships and equipment. I told the vice president, go all over the United States in that FAMU and get anything you want, and I'll give it to you under my property disposal program. I don't mean to be belaboring the point, but my point is that no, black schools have never, except that one few situations at Florida A&M University, were ever equipped to be able to teach black folk. The first thing they should be teach them where they are and what they should be working towards. That means that most of every curriculum right now in every damn public school and any of these black HBCUs should be rewritten. Should be rewritten on where black folk are now and where you want them to go. What I mean by that, cut out trying to be miniature white colleges. Stop trying to be white miniature college. If the kids want to go to a white college, tell them go straight to it. Don't go to a black school and ask them, convert you. We want you to be a miniature white school. You go to that school and say, now, what should black folk be training? If you want to go to outer space, everybody's talking about going outer space. Why aren't these black schools right now teaching black kids astronautical skills? Why don't they teach them how to be pilots? Why aren't you teaching them right now to be engineers, to get spaceships up and rocket ships? Why don't you teach them about how to use liquid oxygen as propellants for rockets and missiles? Why aren't you teaching them right now how to live on a planet and with proper clothing, how to raise vegetables, or whatever you need from outer space. In other words, we have no schools that are equipped in an HBUC to teach Black folk where they are and to teach them where they wish to be going, what they need to learn to be competitive with whites in the country. There are only miniature white white businesses teaching Black kids to go and be aides and special assistants or administrators in white businesses or white schools.
Mm. Everybody who's listening, I'm speaking with Dr. Claud Anderson. Dr. Anderson is the author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, and Dirty Little Secrets 1 and 2. His website is powernomics.com. That's powernomics.com. Take 1 second. Please hit the thumbs up button. Everybody right now, please hit that thumbs up button because we are building Black media. This is something where we need everybody's help, all hands on deck. Just take a second, hit the thumbs up button, share this video because we need to be the school system. We need to be the industrialists. We need to create the industry. And so, Dr. Anderson, I wanted to kind of ask you about, something, so as everybody knows, maybe you don't know, but tonight we're premiering a new movie we just made. And we've been making movies for about 5 or 6 years. They've been seen by millions of people. We made Democracy, a Black American horror story, Resurrecting Black Wall Street, because we felt that every Black person in America needed to hear the Black Wall Street story. We sold out a whole, big old theater in Chicago showing this movie. And we've done a lot of other things, the Black Love Blueprint, because we feel that there was a deliberate effort to destroy the Black family. We believe that the Black family, the destruction of the Black family was one of the keys to maintaining slavery, as well as one of the keys to controlling Black folks, even to this day. And I'd like to get your thoughts on this. As we watch this movie tonight, it's actually called Till Death Do Us Part, but it's an extension of the whole Black Love Blueprint. The reason we did it is because we realized that there's so much trauma and pain from slavery, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, the war on drugs, the crack era, things like that, that Black folks are having trouble getting along with each other. The men and the women, they don't have, like the way you and Mrs. Anderson have been married for so many years, and she's been an important part of your life in building you up, and you build her up. You don't see that as much anymore. And I believe that that's causing our community to lose. I believe that there are people that want our families destroyed, and they want to keep it that way. They want the Black man to be dismantled and removed and replaced by the government. I believe that they want any form of unity to be ruined. And I remember in Black Labor, White Wealth, you wrote specifically about specific laws and doctrines they put in place to ensure that Black people did not unify, that you could not form strong units, families, or communities. Can you speak to some of that in terms of what we're up against, in terms of how important it is when they're maintaining systematic racism to keep Black people as divided as possible? Can you kind of educate us on that so that we can kind of understand why this mission is so important?
Well, only to this degree, that the whole purpose of slavery was to do two things primarily. One was to maldistribute almost 100% of all this nation's resources in terms of wealth building, power, and then privileges and opportunities. That was to put it all into maldistributed into the hands of the dominant white society, or those individuals who can be classified as either sub-whites or a partner in the white partnerships across the country. That means people like Asians, Arabs, Hispanics, or anybody like that. They can come in there. They're basically whites. Hispanics are number whites speaking Spanish. Consequently, they were classified as whites up until 1970 when I had the dubious honor of writing the first affirmative action plan in the United States. I didn't write it for minorities and poor folk and people of color, a gender or handicap or crippled, deaf, dumb, and blind, and those who are crawling around looking, playing, shooting crap on their knees in an alley. No, this was written for Black folk. I wrote that plan for Black folk. But as soon as it got on the market, people switched it and started using, made it and expanded it for everybody. So consequently, it had no measurable impact on Blacks. Well, jumping to that point, I told you earlier that another way they stripped the Black colleges of their little bit of their role, which was not the real honest role in the first place, but it did work. The manual skills did help Black folk through Jim Crow segregation. But they never had a school system set up primarily strictly to educate Black folk to be competitive people based on their needs and where they want to go and follow their plan and build their own industries in this country. Never happened. And why that's important is because when the Industrial Revolution first hit this earth, it went through Europe first in the 1700s. and the Industrial Revolution started in Europe, went all the way across Europe, and all those various nationalities had a chance to industrialize all the way over to the eastern areas of the world. The only people that did not get to enjoy the fruits of industrialization in the 1700s were black folk, because they were slaves, and they were part of the slavery process. They were people who used their labor. Everybody started using their labor as free labor, and they freeloaded off of it. Well, in the 1800s, when the Industrial Revolution finally came to America in the 1800s, black folk were still enslaved, and they were enslaved in America at that time, and they didn't get a chance to build industries. And in any respect, whites jumped onto industries and started building industries in the country. Those same whites that were in Europe when industrialization went through Europe, they then, the next generation, they were coming to America to apply those things they learned about industrialization. And they're going to use black folk just like they used them in Europe during the 1700s. They're going to use them in the 1800s. And consequently, blacks never learned those skills. Now, here's what they did. When they did set up those schools, I forgot to tell you this a few minutes ago, they made sure the money was spread to everybody. Never have you ever heard anybody say, we want all the colleges. Because see, when black folk were slaves, American Indians were slave holders too. They were slave holders. They held blacks as slaves. All the major Indian tribes were pimped and hustled black folk. And now you see them getting special privileges across this country. And they've been getting them now ever since the early 1900s. But they mandated every kid on a black reservation, a black Indian, had to go to school. He had to go to school. He had to go. And any immigrants coming in here, they sat on the front row with the white kids. Black kids were outside washing the windows or mopping the floors or sweeping the yards. And so any funds that went into it, they got a college fund for Indians. You cannot get any of those monies out of a college fund for Indians. Only Indians can get that money. But now for the HBCUs that you're asking about earlier a few minutes ago, anybody can get that money out of there. That's why I said any white college right now can get as much money as they want out of the HBCU fund by simply saying, we write a notation saying we got a 21% white Hispanic population now in this country. So now we want to be equal to black folk in getting monies out of the HBCU funds. And so when you go to brag about how much money you put into the HBCU funds, you're telling a lie. Most of that money is not even going to blacks. It can go to anybody. American Indians can take money out of that pot. Whites can take it out. Asians, Arabs, and everybody else. That's why right now at Harvard, all these elite, what they call them, Israeli elites, they are now demanding that you stop giving racial preferences to black folk in white colleges. Stop giving. That's going on right now. I have not heard one black person make an issue out of that. And now all the major universities are being challenged to stop giving out racial preferences to black. But at the same time, a white kid can go to a black college, HBCU, anytime, and not only get admitted, he can go in and get special grants and scholarships. Something is wrong. That's why I said that law and that little resolution and executive order in 1996 by the Bush says that anything that has a significant amount of white Hispanics going to anything that's white is now classified as being equal to a black college.
Well, you know what? I think that's important information for sure. And actually, so let's dig into that though. I want to go back to that group economics issue that you talk about so well in Black Labor, White Wealth, and Powernomics. I was, earlier I was thinking, I wanted to go in the direction of talking about why, because you think about it, right? When you got these problems with these systems, these universities not doing what they're supposed to do, corporations not doing what they're supposed to do, government not doing what it's supposed to do, you have to battle that. You have to battle systems with a system. Systematic racism is a system. Where are systems? And so when I read Powernomics, I'm picking up from your argument that a lot of your systems can come from your groups. And and what I was mentioning earlier was like the family. I believe the family is your first group. And from what I've read in your books about slavery, there was an effort to ensure that you never had groups, that Black people were not positioned to battle as a collective, as a team. You talk about wealth being a team sport. I don't see a lot of teams. I see single mothers trying to do it all by themselves. I see single fathers with kids everywhere trying to do it, trying to figure it out, trying to survive. And that's not powernomics. That's strugglenomics. That is, I'm just, I can't change the world because I'm barely just trying to keep my head above water. Right. And that becomes a very common struggle. So the direction I wanted to ask you to go to address on that is, okay, so we know that these systems and these institutions are not going to do right by us. I believe those systems exist in our community. I believe those institutions can be built in our community. Like, for example, the Harvest Institute is our think tank. We should support think tanks that represent our interests. Our family, I see my family as an institution that protects me against some of the things that might try to harm me or steal my wealth. I have collectives of Black businessmen and Black businesswomen that I work with that create systems. So I'd like to get your thoughts on how we can form better groups. How do we form better systems and unify so that we can sort of combat some of this? Because I see a lot of division, and that was why we made this movie about family. Because I said y'all need to learn from people like Dr. Anderson, who's been married to his wife all those years. I can't imagine you have been able to be the man you are without family. Can you kind of speak to some of that a little bit?
Yes, I can. And you can't, and you're absolutely right. You can't do it. You can't, because the second thing that besides stripping Black folk of their wealth, and see, most people don't know, so what Black folk didn't have any wealth and they were slaves. Yes, they did have wealth. That's another lie that's very commonly told and heralded around the world, that slaves didn't own and didn't have any wealth. They did have wealth. You know what their wealth was, Doctor? I bet you know it, but I'm just going to refresh your memory. It was their labor. Their labor was wealth. See, you cannot have wealth without labor. And what Vice took from them was their wealth, their labor, because of what that was producing products, services, and goods for everybody that had slaves. And so what white folk did, they stripped Black folk of their potential to be able to convert their labor to wealth that would be passed on from generation to generation within their own community. And so what does that mean? You got to have communities, be able to hold it. So to get wealth, you got to have communities. I've stressed now for 60 years the importance of developing communities, while at the same time, all these civil rights and these very visible Blacks keep talking about social integration, disintegration. They want to say, no, we got to scatter out. Our power is being scattered. That's wrong. Nobody's Jews tried that in the 1500s and got wiped out. They decided we'll never try to scatter ourselves out anymore. We're not going to be trying to scatter all our practitioners in the religion to try to convert them to being Protestants and Roman Catholics and all this. They stay strictly with what they are, with their own group. And see, what we need is that we need to have communities. Until you get communities, you cannot deal with the problems of the divisions and divisiveness that was created by slavery. Now, why is that true? Because you must first have a community. I'm going to use my hand as an example, put on your screen. This is a level where Black folk are. Now, for them to be able to build, it's a vertical structure. And first, to build it, you got to have a community. And in that community, once you start brought into the community, then you move to the next level. Once you build a community, then people be learning to do what? They learn to know each other, respect each other. Right now, Black folk are scattered here to yonder. I can go into any city in the United States and Black folk are scattered all over. You don't have a Black community any place in America. There's not one Black community in the entire United States. How in the world are you going to compete through integration? How can you compete? Integration made you a guest, G-U-E-S-T. It made you a guest in what other people own and control. You could say, we don't have to be together. We don't have to all go to the same store, the same business and buy, let's keep our money with our own people, make it balance with our own people. We should be able to go to any place and give everybody our money anytime we want to give it to them. That shows a stupidity. And you got Black politicians telling Black folk, we're not monolithic. We don't all have to belong to the same political party. We don't have to belong to the same religion. That's a lie. You should be. If you've been enslaved for 360 years, Jim Crow semi-slave another 150 years, denied, neglected for another 60 years, damn it, you should have by now learned you must stick together. And because racism is a team sport. You either play as a team or you lose by default. And whether you like it or not, God has arbitrarily sent your butt to this earth and assigned you to a color group. That's what you should be sticking to and trying to stay together, and you won't have the divisiveness. And try to vertically integrate. Once you get that community and you go to the next level up, and that means you learn how to communicate with each other. Right now, if you don't know if you don't have a community, you don't know each other. You don't have no knowledge of the next person, and you got to say, well, let's say I'm living in Chicago. I got to find somebody in Chicago or black or in Kalamazoo, Michigan, or in New York that I can be in harmony with. Won't work. You got to be in harmony with the blacks in Chicago, and you have black folks going there teaching you stuff that's backwards. You can't have community. See, once you have a community and you get to know each other, you can communicate. Once you can communicate, then you go to the third level. The third level up is that you learn how to cooperate. You learn how to cooperate after you get a knowledge and a familiarity with the people that you live with. See, if you don't know the people, you're not gonna. If I tell you send you to this doctor and you don't know the doctor, I said, go to that doctor right there. I know you got one of those. You got a social disease. Go there and he'll take care of you. You say, I don't know who the world is, but I know he was an immigrant. He came from the land of Mongo Duda. And now you got to go in and get a social disease treated. And he goes and you go in and say, he said, drop your pants. You don't know what, I don't know what this guy's going to do. You have to know each other. And once you know each other, then you go to the next level, you trust each other. And once you trust each other, then the top level, you then cooperate. You will cooperate with somebody that you trust. But trust comes out of having a community with people you have knowledge of. Right now in Chicago, I'll bet you right now that 90% of the people living in Chicago, where you live, I'll bet you most of them don't even know their neighbors, don't even know who's in the next building over or down the street. Most of them don't even know each other anymore. But when I was a kid in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, we knew everybody for about a mile around in a circumference. Everybody knew each other. We trusted. So we had trust. We had trust because we all lived in the same community. And when my mother said she was going downtown to shop, and I know I'm stretching this out and I'm taking up too much of your time.
No.
But once she was heading downtown and she said, I'm going to go downtown to shop. She would say, Miss Jones and Miss Hattie, watch the kids. And guess what? She left the house wide open, Doc.
Wow.
The back door would be open and the front door would be open. You know why? Because we didn't have air conditioning in those days. You didn't keep the house all locked up. You let the wind blow through the house. You leave the windows up. And guess what? Nobody went in there robbing you, breaking into your house, going through the windows and coming through the doors and steal. You know why? Because they knew each other and they could communicate. And so they trusted each other. And so I can go across the street and say, Miss Tompkins, my mother said, I want to get some sugar. Can you loan her some sugar? She said, child, go in the kitchen, get how much you want. Didn't make it a difference there. Everybody cooperated, stayed together, played together, shared together. So to answer your question, if you're going to get the device, if you're going to get rid of the divisiveness among Black folk and recapture what was taken from you, along with your money and your wealth, was your ability to come together at any point, any place, any time, and cooperate with each other. You can't cooperate with people that you don't know. If you don't live in a community and you don't know them, you're not going to cooperate, Doc. So they're going to stay divided.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And I do not know, and I want everybody to listen. I can't think of any situation where if you have an army, and you're fighting against another army that's unified and has a collective strategy and a coordinated strategy, and you scatter in different directions, you're not going to win that fight. Your soldiers are going to get killed one by one. And so when I think about things like integration designed to dilute Black concentration, I connect that not just with integration itself in terms of dilution of the financial resources, giving our money to all these other businesses except our own, dilution in terms of population. We're trying to live in everybody's neighborhood except we don't want to be around each other. I also see dilution in terms of family, where the men and the women that kind of feel like they can go in different directions and not understand that as a family unit, you are better off as a unit. And I think that we got to understand it from a microscopic level, right? You've got the big scale of it, which is Black people are now winning. We all sort of hit by the same racism, same discrimination, same mistreatment, things like that. And all of us feel powerless to fight it individually, right? But so to me, that unity piece is extremely important. And it starts with the core of community unity, which is the family. And so I feel like, Dr. Anderson, that when they destroyed our families, that's when they really got us. If you think about it, I want everybody to listen to me when I say this. Not Dr. Anderson, I'd like you to get the last word on this. But I want y'all to think about how hard it is when you have just, let's say, just like my family, when the father left. You know, my mother was just by herself. She wasn't in a position to go and change the world. We weren't in a position to defend ourselves against anything, because I'm a little baby. She's a single mother. We were just hoping to survive, you know, and there's a lot of families out there, a lot of Black folks out there that are in survival mode. I know a lot of men. You say, well, how you doing? Are you changing the world? What are you doing? Nah, man, just barely making it by. And people that have strong families don't have to talk like that. They've got the basics handled, so they're able to, as a group, go accomplish things. They're able to, you know, take care of the basic needs and go start a business. They're able to defend themselves against outside attacks. So I really want everybody, and maybe Dr. Anderson, maybe you could tell me where I'm off base or what's right and what's wrong about this argument, but I believe that unity starts on a very basic level, not just with your spouse and your children, but also even when you're engaging other people around you. I am able to survive because I formed healthy relationships with other Black people who are like-minded to me. So I don't feel like I'm alone. You know, I say a lot of radical things that where white people will fire me quickly. You know, white people won't support me for anything that I do, but I'm okay with that because I've got other Black people around me that I can count on and turn to, and we have formed a group. So I think that word group is a really important word. And I don't know if we focus on that enough in terms of understanding that that's where wealth and power comes from. Most wealthy people are part of a group. Can you speak to that?
You're absolutely right. and that divisiveness really goes back all the way to slavery began. When slavery began, and they started bringing those Blacks onto those ships coming out of Africa. And what they did, Boyce, was to divide them up. They kept them pretty well divided, and they mixed them up with other Black folks who, you know why? So they could not communicate. They could not form communities on those ships because they were pinned to a table and to a platform, and they had to associate with others who had different languages. Right now in Africa, that's your biggest problem in Africa right now. Those Blacks in Africa can't do very much of anything. You know why? Because in 1886, when they went into march into Germany and started at the Berlin Conference, they said, let's split that damn country up, that continent up, and split it up and make it and say, everybody pick up, get the map, draw a circle around that land which you want as white people to own in Africa. And so everybody drew a piece. America took Liberia, and the rest of everybody, and others took different continents, and French, Germans, everybody took a piece of Africa. And then guess what? And then in that, they socially integrated them. So that now if I go to Nigeria, for instance, like when he had a trade mission there, I found there are over 200, Doc, there are over 200 tribes, members of different tribes in Nigeria. And guess what? Guess how many languages they got? They got over 200 different languages there. Now, how in the hell are you going to communicate and get rid of divisiveness when you've already been divided through social engineering? You've been socially engineered to be divided. And so nowadays they call it social integration rather than social engineering. And here you are now in Washington, D.C., where 75% of all the Black kids are being sent out on buses into different neighborhoods where they are still a minority. They're a minority and can't communicate and have nobody to identify with in those communities all day long. Black folks should be ashamed of themselves and the Black leadership in this country. Any visible Black in America right now should just go stick his head in the toilet and flush it. For being that damn dumb to go around and let people keep socially integrating you, dividing you up, talking about, I belong to the Democratic Party, you belong to the Republican Party. I said, well, where is the Black Party? Why didn't you start a Black Party? In 1997, when I wrote Powernomics, I said, the first thing you must do is create your own Black Party in America and call it the Black Party for Black people in America, not an African American party. Not an African American, because you got Blacks coming in from Europe, you got Blacks coming in from Africa, you got Blacks coming in from the Caribbean. They are not native Black people. They've never been subjected to the same kind of discrimination and centuries of abuse, exploitation, misuse, and misdirection that whites are imposing on them. Native Black Americans are different from any other Blacks coming to America every day. And so you look on TV right now, half the people that got jobs on television right now, they're not native black Americans. Those are people that came in from the islands and every place else. They don't have the same perspective. They're gonna be totally for integration. Integration is again to destroy black folk. That's why you got gentrification. Gentrification is another form of social integration where whites are going to dominate and control. I can go on and on, but at this point, I know your time is up, and we'll pick up this again later. But right now, as I said, we have no schools in this country that have been disengaged from how they were set up originally to either teach black folk to be subjective, obedience, and be willing to be guests in what other people own and control. That's the way it was set up. They were denied the basic skills instead of teaching business from the perspective of building industries and able and dominating and producing products and services and good for their people. They were taught business administration. They've never been taught how to learn how to build and control resources. And if you want something in the society, don't go after rights. Rights ain't worth a damn. That's why nobody else talks about rights but black folk. If I talk about women gonna say, we want us. What do you want for rights? We want women's rights. What do you want? We want gay rights. What do you want? We want army rights. We want poor people rights. What do you want? We want physically handicapped rights. We get to a black person. What do you want? I want civil rights. I said, who in the hell is civil? Quit talking about civil. You had civil rights back in the 1816, and you gave it away to the Supreme Court. Now everybody talks about civil rights. Civil rights is a negative. And not one has ever gotten. So Dr. Anderson, we're with you. By the Black History Reader, look at the first chapter, first question. It says, you've been socially integrated and socially engineered into being incompetent, non-competitive, and subordinate to anything else that comes in the country. And this thing now that Biden is pushing for the DACA, for more immigrants coming in, is going to clean your tubes. And then as far as education is concerned, black people have the record coming out of slavery between 1840s and all the way to 1880s. Black folk hold the records for having the greatest educational achievement in the history of the world. Not Jews, not whites, not Asians, not Hispanic, black folk. Because up until the end of the Civil War, black people were denied an education of any substance. It was against the law to teach a black person to read and write. It would cost you $100, 100 lashes, and a fine for being caught teaching a black person to read and write. And yet, so that means that when slavery ended in the 1860s, guess what? 96% of all the black people in America could not read and write. That was from 1866. In 30 years up to 96, guess what? Black folk educated themselves. Like I'm telling you to do now, educate yourself based on what your needs are, not what other people's needs are. So in that 30-year period between 1866 and 1896, black people in America reduced their illiteracy rate. For being stuck on stupid, they reduced it from 96% down to 42% in 30 years. And at the same time, whites are bringing in all these immigrants to be the management class over black folk in that same 30-year time period. And guess what? That 96%, almost 100% of all the whites coming into America could not read and write either, just like black folk couldn't. But they went into a management class. Because the first shipload of whites came over. They came over to be the ownership class. Those were the wealthy people that got all the land and resources. The second load that came in after the Civil War, they came in to be the management class, to be over black folk, to provide them for jobs and use them as cheap labor. And they could not read and write. But black folk in that 30-year time period reduced their literacy rate from 96%, same as dumbass whites coming from abroad in, and then down to 42%. So black folk can do it if they focus on building institutions whose primary and sole responsibility is to teach their people the skills and attitudes and competencies that are necessary to be a competitive, cohesive people, period. That's it. And right now we don't have that. We have no white institution that's teaching black folks to be able to unite and collaborate for their betterment. We have no white schools going to teach black folk that. Whites are basically homicidal and not suicidal. Nobody's going to do it but somebody like Claud Anderson and Dr. Dr. Watkins, who would say, get out there and educate your own people based on your needs, where you want to go in the new world. And that's what you should be doing. And I love you for it. And I'm sorry I took up all your time.
You didn't take up all my time. I'm very happy. I'm honored that you took the time to share that with us. And everybody, I want you to know that if you want you remember our fundamental belief in the Black Business School is the Black Core 3. We believe Black people should educate our own children, create our own jobs, support Black businesses. And then the fourth one would be rebuild our families. We have to do that because your education system, your school system starts in your house. It starts with your family. And so don't even just look at us. We can provide guidance, but I want you to look internally. You define the culture in your house. Every household has a culture. Define what that culture is going to be. And so if you want some help, we have some free resources at the allblackagenda.com, like the $5 a day investing plan, how you can build a capital base for your child by investing small amounts of money over a 20-year period. Your child will be financially secure. They will not be in the struggle. They will not be out here talking like all these other victims. Your child will be in a position where they do not have to work for anybody if they don't want to. The other little things you do, those little tiny things will make all the difference. So please do those things. Now, Dr. Anderson, I want to say thank you for your time. And I want to remind everybody that Dr. Anderson's website is powernomics.com. I'm going to put this up on the screen so that everybody can see it because I really want everybody to go. And when you're building your own internal school system, go to powernomics.com, add Dr. Anderson's books into your library. I have it in my library for my children. We gave away copies of Powernomics at my wedding. Because the wedding should reflect what you believe in. That's one of the things I believe in. So feel free to go to powernomics.com. Also, last but not least, don't forget that tonight we're releasing our new film called Till Death Do Us Part. And it's all about restoring Black families. And I got six couples, but Tierra KJ Williams is the director, and she got 6 Black couples that have been married for more than 30 years and have children and grandchildren and a powerful legacy. And I want them to give you the raw truth on what it takes to do that. And we're going to bring in we're not just going to enjoy the movie for free, which I don't want you to pay anything, but also we want to talk about the healing process. That's why we're bringing in not just the couples and the director, but we're bringing in a therapist. The first one's going to actually be my wife, Dr. Alicia. We'll bring in some others as well, because I want you to heal. I want you to heal because I promise you, if you can find a way to get along with other Black folks and form a group, then that gives you the chance to compete as a group. But if you can't form a group, if you always fighting, you're always traumatizing each other, triggering each other, trying to attack each other constantly, you can't build groups, which means white supremacy will always win. An individual can't fight a system. Systems are built on groups. Build your group, build your system. That's how you win. So thank you very much, Dr. Anderson. It was great to see you again, my friend.
Well, thank you. And as I said, I feel excellent today. I feel like I can go out and fight the world on behalf of Black Powernomics and my good friend, Doc, who's operating one of the best schools in the country for Blacks, and teach them where they are and where they need to go and the skills they're going to need to get them there. And again, provide the leadership to take them there. Because right now we have no Black leadership in the country, period. Not one who's out there talking strictly and solely for Black folk. They're out there talking about all these cross-horizontal groups that are now competing with Black folk for the resources. And the thing we should be looking for is resource ownership. It's what you own and control that determines your future, your opportunities, and what you can get and where you can go. So you tell them that. Tell them rice won't do it. Rice ain't worth a quarter. And what you need is co-own and control resources. I love you, my buddy. And I'll see you next week, okay?
All right, my friend. Take care. And by the way, to watch the movie tonight, you can go to blackmovienight.net. That's the URL. Some of y'all were asking for it. It's right there on the screen. So have a good day, everybody. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out. Take care, Dr. Anderson. I'll see you,
buddy.
All right. Bye-bye.